Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're getting the walkie-talkies ready and polishing the badges because we're about to dive into the most colorful and pop version of the past you can imagine. So if, like me, you have a soft spot for the 2000s, get comfortable. You know, there are some movies that aren't just movies, they're time capsules. Today I decided to dig into my personal archive because, being a deeply nostalgic person, there's one title that holds a very special place in my heart. I'm talking about a film that smells like cherry lip gloss, early 2000s culture, and an aesthetic so unapologetically pop that it takes me straight back in time. I'm talking about D.E.B.S. To really understand D.E.B.S, we have to go back for a second. We're at the beginning of the new millennium, and the social context for the LGBTQ+ community was very different from what it is today. Queer narratives were still almost entirely heavy, tragic, pushed to the margins, and representation was often treated as something to mock. Lesbian representation on the big screen nearly always came through drama, punishment, or suffering. And in that kind of landscape, D.E.B.S. arrived like a breath of fresh air. It was an act of rebellion in pastel colors. For the queer community at the time, the film represented the possibility of seeing themselves reflected in a story where being queer was not a problem to fix, but simply part of a fun spy mission. It was one of the first films to normalize attraction between two women in the context of pure mainstream entertainment. The film, released in 2004, was written and directed by Angela Robinson, who had already tested the idea with a short film of the same name the year before. It was produced by Screen Gems, a division of Sony. Even though it wasn't a huge blockbuster at the box office, in fact, at first it was almost a commercial flop, it had a legendary second life. Thanks to word of mouth and the home video market, it became an instant cult classic. A real reference point for generations of people who were looking for representation, lightness, and style without having to give up identity. In the cast, we have actresses like Sarah Foster as Amy Bradshaw, the perfect girl of the group. Jordana Brewster, who is obviously famous for Fast and Furious, plays the most fascinating villain ever, Lucy Diamond. Megan Good plays the determined Max. Devon Aoki is the iconic Dominique, who barely says a word but steals every scene with her ever-present cigarette and her French allure. Jill Ritchie plays the sweet and slightly ditzy Janet. And beyond these characters, we also get appearances from the amazing Holland Taylor and the famous Michael Clark Duncan, an important presence you may remember from The Green Mile. The story itself is simple. The government recruits elite spies through an aptitude test hidden inside the school SATs. The girls, the D.E.B.S, are trained to fight international crime. Everything changes when the world's #1 criminal, Lucy Diamond, returns to town. Amy Bradshaw is assigned to keep an eye on her, but during a shootout, the two of them end up talking and then liking each other. What follows is this absurd romantic escape through secret clubs and stolen kisses, while Amy's friends try to save her from what they think is a kidnapping, when in reality it's the beginning of a beautiful love story. Amy is the perfect recruit. She's the only one who earned a perfect score on the D.E.B.S test, the famous perfect score, but that achievement is also her prison. At the beginning, she's rigid, obsessed with duty, and trapped in a mediocre relationship with a guy who doesn't understand her. She's the classic good girl who does everything everyone expects from her. Meeting Lucy Diamond becomes the inciting incident of her freedom. Amy discovers that perfection is boring, and that her real strength does not lie in following the rules, but in following her instincts. She goes from being an obedient soldier to becoming a woman who chooses her own happiness, even if that means joining the enemy. Lucy is the supreme evil, or at least that's what the files say. She has a doctorate in nuclear physics. She once tried to sink Russia, and she has an entire fleet of henchmen. And yet, despite all of that reputation, Lucy is deeply lonely. She's cynical, sarcastic, and exhausted by disastrous dates. Her blind date scene is unforgettable. Her wickedness is really a mask she wears because it is what the world expects from a brilliant and powerful woman. Through Amy, Lucy learns that she doesn't actually have to be evil. Her evolution is a journey toward vulnerability. For the first time, she risks her criminal empire for a real feeling, proving that even the most feared villain just wants to be seen for who she really is.
So why did I love this movie so much? I'll tell you immediately. The tartan uniforms, the weapons coordinated with the outfits, the use of saturated colors. It's pure Pinterest aesthetic before Pinterest even existed. And when Lucy Diamond sings that erasure song for Amy, that is the exact moment the film won me over completely. And since I'm the kind of person I am, I could never talk about this movie without mentioning its soundtrack, which is basically a manifesto for the energy of that era. The dominant sound is this irresistible mix of indie pop, new wave, and dance punk. One of the absolute musts in this film is its soundtrack, especially the way it brings back classic 80s synth pop and reinterprets it in a modern key. How could anyone forget the iconic scene where Lucy Diamond sings "A Little Respect" by Erasure? That song is not just a song. It's one of those melodies that, the second you hear it, takes you right back to the film and the exact scene where you first felt it. The moment when the bad girl lowers her guard and shows her vulnerability. The music in D.E.B.S. carries that feeling of freedom, of running toward the unknown, and of shy love. And that's a huge part of what made the film such an icon. It's a moment of incredible sweetness, and also one of the funniest in the movie. In my opinion, Lucy Diamond isn't evil because she hates the world. She's evil because that's all she has ever known, and she's searching for someone who can truly understand her. And the fact that the good girl ends up choosing the villain is exactly the happy ending we were all dreaming of. Even in this movie, we run into that theory of mine that I've mentioned in previous videos, that human beings by nature want to save someone else, while that other person needs to be saved. It's a process that keeps happening over and over again. So no, this is not just a movie about spies and tartan miniskirts. It was a real pop culture earthquake. At a time when LGBTQ+ representation was often either tragic or invisible, D.E.B.S. arrived with its pastel-colored aesthetic and told us that we could be the heroines, we could be the villains, but most of all, we could fall in love and get our happy ending without asking anyone for permission. And now I want to hear from you. Who was your favorite spy? Were you more of an Amy, a Max, or did you have a weakness for the magnetic charm of Lucy Diamond? Tell me in the comments below, and let me know whether this film was also that same safe harbor for you that it was for me. And don't forget to leave a heart if you too would still love to have that tartan uniform in your closet today. See you at the next trip into the past. Bye.